18-year-old Jerry Johnsey and 16-year-old Brian Lasik are accused of having no regard for human life. According to the sheriff's office, the two signed up for sex through a Craigslist ad with this man. But during the rendezvous at his home, court documents state the boys wound up strangling and beating the victim to death, then going back the next day, dousing him in gas and burning the crime scene to the ground.
Officers say a car drove by and started shooting at the group. Now, there's a possibility that the group here at the park exchanged gunfire with that car driving by. We know those two women were hit and they're still receiving care at the hospital. Investigators have been collecting evidence around the park and inside the park tonight.
A judge denied bail today for 47-year-old David Fench. Fench is accused of killing a 16-year-old while the teen was on his way to school last week. He had several previous DUIs. It happened near Durango and Farm Road.
Nathan Fisher is accused of robbing the PNC Bank in Glenelg last month. He was arrested over the weekend in another jurisdiction and is being held there on unrelated charges. At this time, detectives haven't linked Fisher to any other bank robberies. Now, an investigation began after a student found Christopher Clark's cell phone recording in a room where girls were changing their clothes. Clark is a special education teacher at the academy. He is charged tonight with voyeurism.
Sentenced to 5 years in prison for aggravated assault. 59-year-old Rhonda Cerny agreed to plead guilty to the charge. So if you remember back, police say that she shot her husband during a fight. Cerny initially denied trying to kill him, but a 911 call captured her admission on tape.
Bill, the work is happening around the clock, and you can see some of the big construction crews behind me moving around these boulders at the top of the dam. Now, these rocks are being bagged up and moved out to patch up the dam's emergency spillway. State water officials spent much of yesterday literally in the trenches of that spillway, guiding in a couple of Black Hawk helicopters as they dropped their heavy loads of rocks in a hole that broke open on Sunday and try to prevent further erosion to what is essentially a ravine that had never been used as an emergency spillway before. Meantime, California Governor Jerry Brown is breaking his silence on the crisis, admitting he didn't know about a warning years ago that the dam was vulnerable, creating the possibility of a major flood. He has asked the White House for federal assistance and had this message for the thousands of people waiting to go back home.
I want to announce that I've filed a letter with the president asking for an emergency declaration for the kind of relief that kind of petition will make available. The federal government is already providing quite a lot of help right now, but this will formalize our request, and then that will be the first step toward a more permanent request for federal assistance.
Trucks passing in the night along the Oroville Dam. Crews spent the evening hauling boulders to the breach in the spillway that triggered evacuations. Meanwhile, in Oroville, an eerie quiet as waves of folks evacuated when the calls to leave came out. But not everyone decided to go.
Yeah, it's a ghost town for reals.
This woman tells us she's scared to stay, but her mother's health prevented her from leaving. When the spillway looked out of control and the evacuation orders came down, she had the same thoughts as her neighbors who bolted.
Get stuff and get out quick, yeah, pretty much.
Miserable, bumper to bumper, cars. It was chaos. Everybody was just rushing it out.
Now, residents are waiting for the all clear, which Butte County Sheriff Corey Honey is not ready to give.
This is still a dynamic situation. It's still a situation we're trying to assess. We need to have time to make sure that before we allow people back into those areas, it is safe to do so.
Officials say this huge dam itself is structurally sound. Only spillway repairs are needed. But back in 2005, environmental groups warned of possible severe damage downstream if the main spillway was not reinforced. Scott, those warnings went unheeded.
An island with a grisly past. Purchased by the Mitsubishi Corporation in 1890, Japan used Chinese and Korean slave laborers on Gunkanjima until the end of World War II in 1945. Post-war, it became the most densely populated place in the world by 1960, its undersea coal mines helping power the nation. At up to 1,000 meters below sea level, the mines off the south coast of Japan ran round the clock, worked by hundreds of men in grueling conditions. The site was finally abandoned in 1974. Just over 40 years later, Gunkanjima, which is also featured in the Bond film Skyfall, was classified as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, a controversial move due to its past. Mitsubishi has awarded compensation to a handful of former workers, with other settlements underway. The island is now a tourist destination where visitors can reflect on its checkered history.
Now, China voices concern over a recent statement by Japan and the U.S. that lays claim to a group of disputed islands in the East China Sea.
China expressed a serious concern about and resolute opposition to the remarks of Japan and the United States. Diaoyu Islands and its affiliated islands have been an inherent part of the Chinese territory since the ancient times. No matter what they say or do, they can neither change the fact that the Diaoyu Islands belong to China, nor shake China's determination and resolution to safeguard the national sovereignty and territorial integrity.
Well, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman urged Washington and Tokyo to act cautiously and avoid making false remarks about the Diaoyu Islands. Gang warned that such comments will negatively affect regional stability. The Japanese and U.S. leaders recently affirmed the Article 5 of their security treaty covers the islands known as the Senkaku in Japan. But China's foreign ministry said the so-called treaty is a product of the Cold War and should not question China's sovereignty over the islands.
And the move towards a Japanese-U.S. relationship is an extension of the extremely important relationship between Japan and Russia and Putin and Shinzo Abe's cooperation, which is now extended to a global situation, breaking the back of the British Empire and the attempt by the empire and Obama to divide the world into East and West, to keep the United States in a military posture against Russia and China.
also reports one of the Chief Defense Forces, together with United States Ambassador, His Excellency Mr. Glenn Davis, together with the United States Commander of the Pacific Command, Admiral Harry Harris. Great picture. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Last night, the UN Security Council unanimously condemned North Korea's latest ballistic missile test. It called Sunday's launch a grave violation of international law. China signed onto that statement. The country is one of North Korea's only allies and its main lifeline. Adriana Diaz is in Beijing following China's reaction. Adriana, good morning.
The missile tested Sunday was a new type, using solid fuel, not liquid, to eject from a mobile launcher. It's more stable and allows for less advanced warning. Analysts say the achievement is a dangerous step forward in North Korea's pursuit of a deliverable nuclear weapon. And it's a first test for President Trump.
I mean, obviously, North Korea is a big problem, and we will deal with that very strongly.
It also potentially pits the new U.S. administration against China, North Korea's only major ally, less than a week after President Trump smoothed things over in a phone call with Chinese President Xi Jinping.
It is Donald Trump's first major challenge from a foreign leader. North Korea said Monday that Kim Jong-un personally guided a successful ballistic missile launch. News of the missile test broke while the U.S. president was hosting Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe at his Florida estate over the weekend. North Korean media said Pyongyang had successfully tested a medium to long-range missile that, Kim was quoted as saying, could be tipped with a nuclear warhead. The test drew strong condemnation from the South. Last year, North Korea conducted 2 nuclear tests and launched dozens of rockets as it tries to enhance its defense capabilities. Many experts say that Pyongyang may not yet be ready to launch an intercontinental ballistic missile capable of reaching the U.S. in the near future, but the latest launch is a troubling reminder of Pyongyang's nuclear ambitions, as well as the limited options that the U.S. has in response.
As the president considers how to respond, questions about how the White House handled the chaotic hours after North Korea's leader celebrated test launching a ballistic missile 300 miles off the Korean coast towards Japan.
Well, that shouldn't happen in an uncleared facility. The basic problem here, though, is what do we do with the crazy North Korea?
Eventually, the 2 leaders left the table and held an impromptu press conference.
Separately, Seoul and Washington agreed the U.S. would deploy strategic assets to the Korean peninsula during the Allies' annual Key Resolve and Full Eagle drills in early March.
U.S. strategic assets can carry nuclear weapons, which can send a strong message to North Korea.
A South Korean military official said Tuesday that F-22 stealth fighters and a nuclear-powered submarine could potentially be part of the drills.
These include nuclear-capable bombers and nuclear-powered aircraft carriers. The ministry did not confirm whether the deployment was in response to the DPRK's launch of a ballistic missile on Sunday. Meanwhile, the UN Security Council strongly condemned the DPRK's latest missile launch in an emergency meeting, saying its activities violate the UN resolutions and increase tensions.
Elaine, the most important thing about this test is that it was a solid fuel missile, as opposed to a liquid fuel missile. A liquid fuel missile can be spotted on the launch pad and watched for 24 to 48 hours while the fueling process takes place and before it can be launched. A solid fuel missile can be placed on a mobile launcher, as this one was, simply driven to a launch site and launched with little or no warning. Now, North Korea has launched solid fuel missiles before, but this is the first time a missile of this range has been launched from the land. So it's one more incremental improvement in the North Korean ballistic missile program, and that, of course, is the problem. Both Republican and Democratic administrations have tried to get North Korea to give up on its nuclear weapons program through diplomatic isolation and economic sanctions, and it's just not working. North Korea continues to make these incremental advances like the one this past weekend. In the past, on occasion, the U.S. has reacted to North Korean tests by sending nuclear-capable bombers on long-range patrols over South Korea. But that may reassure the South Koreans that the U.S. is going to stick with them. But so far, obviously, it hasn't convinced the North Koreans to give up their ambitions.
Bruce, where do you see this playing out? It's hard to believe. Okay, the UN comes out and they strongly condemn the actions of North Korea. It just feels like we're in a collision course with history with this guy.
Yeah, the tension is going up. There's a lot of reasons to be nervous. North Korea is increasing its capability. It already can threaten South Korea and Japan with nuclear weapons, with existing missiles and warheads. It demonstrated an ability to hit Guam with a new missile last year, and then they are continuing the quest towards the ICBM. They've vowed they will never give up their nuclear weapons, and we've tried diplomacy many times in the past, and it always failed.
And this just coming in, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's half-brother has reportedly been assassinated in Malaysia. South Korean broadcaster TV Joseon said Tuesday Kim Jong-nam was killed by two unidentified women using poison needles at Kuala Lumpur airport on Monday at around 9 a.m.
Kim Jong-nam, the older half-brother of the North Korean leader, was known to be based mostly outside of his home country.
We understand from this police chief that deceased was trying to leave the country and was at the airport. He approached one of the airline counters asking for help as he was feeling unwell, they say. An ambulance was called, but then according to the police chief, the deceased actually passed away whilst in that ambulance on the way to a hospital. Now, another police source has confirmed that this was in fact Kim Jong-nam, the half-brother of Kim Jong-un. He has been in exile from North Korea for many years, and this is the latest information that we have at this point out of Malaysia. Jonathan?
They say he's been in exile. Media accounts suggest he was in Malaysia because he feared for his life and had for years.
Well, this Kim Jong-nam, he was originally, by many North Korean observers, assumed to be the heir apparent to Kim Jong-il, the former, the late leader of North Korea. He's the eldest son of Kim Jong-il, so he's the current leader's eldest brother, the half-brother. He was believed to be the heir apparent. There was an incident back in 2001 when he was caught trying to enter Japan on a fake passport. It was reported at that point, and he has confirmed in interviews since that he was trying to get to Tokyo Disneyland, and it is assumed by many North Korean observers at that point, but that he fell out of favor with the family. We know that he has been in China for many years. He had been seen many times in Macau. He actually wrote a book about his experiences alongside a Japanese journalist who helped him pen that book, talking about his Chinese bodyguards. He appeared to be understanding that he was certainly a target in some way.
Давайте, наверное, уходим отсюда. Вообще. Вот этот сейчас прадик провалится.
In northern Alabama, a man made a plea to his grandma, pay a ransom or else. 23-year-old Preston Kelly texted his grandmother a photo of himself that made it appear that he was being held captive, bound and beaten in a wooded area in Tennessee. He allegedly told her that if she didn't go to Walmart and send him $1,000 through a MoneyGram, that he would be killed. The savvy grandma didn't fall for her grandson's ingenious plot and instead opting to contact authorities to express her concern. Investigators quickly concluded that Kelly wasn't in Tennessee and that it was a hoax. He was arrested and charged with first-degree extortion. While being questioned, Kelly told investigators that the events actually transpired. If convicted, Kelly faces up to 20 years in jail.
Frank Ancona's body was found Saturday about 20 miles from his home. He had been shot in the head.
Prosecutors say his Klan membership was not a factor in the killing, but rather that the motive was more personal. They say Ancona had told his wife he wanted a divorce. Melissa Ancona and her son Paul Jickerson are charged with first-degree murder, tampering with evidence, and abandonment of a corpse. Investigators say Jickerson was the one who pulled the trigger and that Melissa helped clean up the scene.
Multiple families face eviction from their Albany Park apartments, they say, because they are Latino. CBS 2's Jim Williams live there tonight. Jim.
Erica, the families who live in this one courtyard building say they have 2 weeks to leave or they will be evicted. They charge it's a case of discrimination. With little warning from the landlord, he said. 19 families, 80 people altogether here in the 4500 block of North Christiana were told in January they had a month to leave.
Fue muy difícil de encontrar porque nadie se sale de los edificios.
We don't have a lease, but we think it's unjust that they're evicting us when we've lived in this community and in this building for several years. The tenants say they're being forced out because they're Latino.
All Latino tenants.
Chad Baker is their attorney.
When they re-rent this building, it's going to be to mostly non-Latino folks.
Baker claims it's happened at other apartments in the area owned by the Silver Property Group.
Por 6 años, pero tenemos más inquilinos que han vivido.
I've lived here for 6 years, but friends here in the building, many of them have lived here 13, 14 years.
The KKK has its sights set on Ohio with ambitions to step up recruiting now across the country. The Southern-based group is looking to bring hate into the heart of Ohio.
It has a renewed interest in increasing membership, all while new statistics are showing a trend in increased hate crimes. News 5's Megan Hickey has been looking into it for us. And Megan, what have you learned?
The so-called Loyal White Knights and other groups have announced plans to ramp up recruitment. Meanwhile, hate crime numbers are on the rise here in Ohio. You've seen the graffiti and heard the crimes motivated by intolerance. But could hate take a stronger, louder hold here in Ohio?
White power! White power!
In Cleveland, the news is not being taken lightly.
The hate of the Ku Klux Klan is a reality. You should not underestimate it.
Disturbing FBI statistics show a growing number of hate crimes in the Buckeye State.
It's 74% race, ethnicity, ancestry bias.
More than twice the nation's average. And the nonprofit that tracks hate groups across the country tells me it's significant.
I think it is concerning for Ohioans that the state has apparently a higher rate, according to the FBI statistics.
But why Ohio? Potok said that in part it's history. There's a rooted branch here. It's also a large state with several multicultural, multi-ethnic cities like Cleveland,
where you have relatively more diverse and liberal, generally cities, in a kind of conflict with the rural areas, which tend to be much more conservative.
Potok said that ultimately the KKK greatly exaggerates its membership. In all, there are around 5,000 members in the United States. But still, racial tension is at a recent high since the election.
They represent a serious threat to the fabric of our society.
We reached out to the Loyal White Knights for comment, but as of this evening did not receive a response.